But unfortunately, there was no Tesla record set and or Pikes Peak record set by Randy at that time, but he did finish, and yeah, basically beat
And is
everybody
part of
up.
that because of the reduced length of the course?
I'll say again?
Is part of that due to the reduced length of the course that he was running? He and
Yeah,
everybody else?
absolutely. Yeah. So he, yeah, well, not just he, but everybody had to basically stop at about 2/3 the length of the course. And I guess there was ice conditions, fog, and a bunch of other items that limited the overall length. And that was quite different than even in 2020. In 2020, when I set the record with the Model 3, we were able to complete the full course. However, about 4 or 5 competitors after me, they suddenly cut the course not halfway, but 2/3. And that happens a lot because the weather conditions change a lot up on the mountain. And I mean, you got to think about this. It's a 14,000 foot mountain. So you're basically bringing a car to plane altitudes with a whole lot of weather conditions that they can't control, and they just try to do the best they can to make a fair race. And they decided early this year to make it so that everybody had the same course.
Hey, Blake, do you have any idea how Randy got his hands on that car so soon?
Well, One Unplugged Performance actually had a car very early, and there were some early production cars. And according to everything I've seen, they basically, and everything I've actually talked to Ben about, they had their car about 3 or 4 weeks before the event started. So, I mean, if you think about it from a chassis standpoint, the Model S chassis does not change a lot between the standard or even the latest, kind of 100 kilowatt hour battery to the one that was raced. So there were some pre-production and there were some early production examples that were available, especially to those who are in California, in LA, and not worried about whether or not their VIN number needs to be registered.
Okay.
So that's, I guess, the cliff notes is that it's a race car, so he got it early.
Okay, so you still don't have yours, right?
Well, actually, I sort of could, but that's a different story that we might cover later. Yeah, I mean, they are shipping them out, but I think the Florida DMV finally has released the ability to have cars be registered.
Why would they want to make it easy?
Exactly. So, Larry, from your standpoint, and I guess we kind of have a limited group that's on here. When I say limited, meaning we have a small, close group. Are there any items that, like, from your standpoint, that you wanted to cover from a housekeeping standpoint or like an introduction standpoint?
No, the only thing would be if everybody was talking at the same time. I want this to be a meetup. I encourage people to actually show their faces. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's totally optional. Obviously, I want you to be able to present, and not be interrupted. But afterwards, it should be a very informal back and forth.
Cool.
Yeah. That would be the only housekeeping I would be talking about.
Excellent. Well, I guess, from a standpoint of kind of catching everybody up to speed and being able to go through some options, I guess one of the first things to talk about is that there's the opportunity and the plan from my standpoint to be able to go to Mount Washington this year. And I don't know how many of those that are tuned in actually know about the Mount Washington hill climb.
I certainly wasn't too conversant in it until you mentioned it casually. Mm-hmm. But so that would be a useful place to start.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can kind of take this meeting in a couple of different directions and or both. One is to talk a little bit about what are the plans going forward. I mean, it's very apparent I wasn't at Pikes Peak this year. I'm happy to address why I wasn't and kind of the strategy behind that. The next is, what are the plans to be able to promote the Tesla brand and to be able to represent the pinnacle of technology at Mount Washington, which I'll get into kind of the details of that. And then I guess outside of that, or inclusive, would be to share some of the videos of or analysis and some Q&A of how this year at Pikes Peak compared to last year's record, as well as really what Tesla's doing to make the Plaid car so amazing, as well as to make the Model 3 still the Model 3 performance still like an amazing car that anybody can take to the track. You know, those are things that are kind of good points to go through.
Sounds good.
So I guess let's start with a little bit of a teaser for the future, because that's always good. I am signed up for, and in August, I plan to compete at what is called the Mount Washington Hill Climb. And what's unique about the Mount Washington Hill Climb is that it is the oldest hill climb and the oldest race in America. It's not the oldest from a standpoint of like a contiguous, like every year they're racing besides wartime, but it's the oldest. The original road at Mount Washington was built in the 1800s. The first race, I believe, was in 1904, which was before Indianapolis, before Pikes Peak, before anybody else was thinking about racing cars up a hill to prove how good they were. And Mount Washington, I had the pleasure to actually go there within the last 2 weeks to do some recon and to do some videoing and to get a sense, because it's still one of the few hill climbs that actually has a little bit of dirt left on it. But they paved a fair amount. But the crazy thing is that this race has been going on for over 100 years, and not a single production electric vehicle has ever competed. And ever since the mid 80s, when I was a big rally fan and I grew up watching rally racing, I'm going, I want to go to Mount Washington. This is like amazing. And then as I blended that with my passion for electric vehicles and my affinity for how Tesla has advanced things, I just kept wanting to go back to Mount Washington to like actually be the first person to ever race a production car up there. And we're signed up to be able to actually race the race. And I had a chance in the last couple of weeks to go do some recce on the course. It is a completely different experience than Pikes Peak. It's I love the background, by the way. I'm not sure who that is, but Paul just dropped in a GoPuck background, the GoPuck Pikes Peak car. I love that. But
That's his car.
Yeah, he could have solved my Ring Central issues about 5 minutes ago. It's going to be a very unique course. It's a lot steeper and a lot tighter. And that's something that I felt was kind of a fun discussion to talk about a little bit tonight, of how I look at going at that event the first time and kind of be able to break it down. So I guess without being it too formal, one of the cool things I did, which I don't know if it was legal or not, I ended up flying a drone all around Mount Washington when we were up there. I know the look, right? Zach's like, what? So my very supportive wife decided to drive our rental car down the hill while I have my FPV goggles on and I'm flying a drone down, because I figured, you know, getting an aerial view is going to help out with the course. It's going to be a really unique challenge. And the person who's going to have the record there, maybe this year, but has had the record, is Travis Pastrana. I think he's probably going to drive the Hoonigan Subaru STI, which is 1,000 horsepower. So very Tesla Plaid worthy. And yeah, I guess I kind of digress a little bit there, but that's my most immediate future plans, is to go to Mount Washington and to be able to bring a Tesla vehicle, whether it's the Model S that I already have, a Model 3 that I have all the racing components for, or ideally and hopefully the Plaid, to be able to represent what's capable and possible. And I kind of think, give or take the weather and testing, I kind of think that Mount Washington, we might maybe set an overall record, or at least be among the top 3. I mean, the entire point of all of this, since the beginning of me going to Pikes Peak and racing Teslas was to prove that electric vehicles were viable and to be able to show people that this isn't just something for somebody who wants a grocery getter, you know? And I'm very thankful for everything that Tesla's done to be able to make that possible.
Of
And I'll
course, it's
pause.
Volkswagen that holds the all-time record in an electric vehicle, correct?
I'll say again?
It's Volkswagen that holds the overall record
Yeah,
in an electric vehicle.
the Volkswagen brand on top of a bunch of engineering of other companies. Yes.
Is that what it is?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and that's how it goes in racing. I mean, you'll find that whether it's Chevrolet, Ford, Volkswagen, or others, they do rely or they stand on the shoulder of giants of other motorsports experts to be able to create a platform to be able to win. And that's the challenging but yet unique thing about Tesla is that there are a lot of motorsports enthusiasts and motorsports competitors that actually work at Tesla. But as of yet, there's no Tesla factory race team. So they're not out there to falsely promote what they build. And that's important.
He needs to finish the Roadster first.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
That would be nice.
Yeah, so basically the IDR does have the overall record at Pikes Peak and a Subaru, which was a former vehicle that I loved and had many Subarus before, that holds the record at Mount Washington. And that's the one that I don't think we're going to necessarily beat this year, but I think it's something that we can strive to be very close to. I mean, the whole point is to finish. You know, in any of these races, it is a goal to win the race, but at this point,
Thinking about Cosby.
go ahead.
And it's not because he was innocent. It was just procedural.
Yeah.
I was just pausing because I didn't know
State Supreme Court.
yeah. So not being a part of your group before, should I just continue on, Larry?
Yes, please.
All right, cool. So I think that one of the most important things when we're trying to promote a new brand like Tesla is to be able to finish without embarrassment or without considerable risk. And a lot of that comes down to having a very well thought out strategy and making sure that basically the car gets to the finish with the best result reasonably possible. And I think that's our strategy from the Mount Washington standpoint. However, after seeing what Randy did at Pikes Peak, it definitely is very intriguing to think that there's a chance for an overall win at that race.
How high is Mount Washington in comparison to Pikes Peak?
From a distance from Florida, it's pretty darn close, but logistically a little bit, I don't want to say more difficult, but yeah, it's about the same drive time.
But what's its altitude?
Oh, okay. So here's the crazy thing. The altitude is less than half the altitude. However, Mount Washington, so basically it ends at around 6,300 feet. And the flora that's around there is very alpine based, and the environmental conditions are such that tree line ends around 5,000 feet. So when I say tree line, that normally is like an oxygen deprivation level, but the types of plants that live there, they're not at the summit. So when you're actually at Mount Washington's peak, you feel like you're way higher than you are. And the other thing that lends the same feeling is that you're starting at a much lower altitude. So at Pikes Peak, you start at 9,000 feet, you end at 14,000 feet. At Mount Washington, you start around 1,000, you end at 6,000. The difference is that the climb or the inclination, you accomplish almost the same vertical altitude in about 7 miles at Mount Washington, whereas it takes about 12 and a half miles at Pikes Peak. The other big difference is that Pikes Peak over the years has been paved and widened, and should I say, Disney-fied. Whereas for Florida residents, Mount Washington's much more Busch Gardens. you might lose a child in the zoo. So it's definitely a little bit it's a little bit crazier in Mount Washington.
Well, Mount Washington would be, how can I put it? Gas cars would be more competitive at Mount Washington than they would be at Pikes Peak.
The way you put it was perfect. From a standpoint of the internal combustion engine, a Mount Washington vehicle has a better chance of success based on the effects of having cooling and a little bit denser air. However, because Mount Washington is a little bit tighter, if you don't have a vehicle like basically the top Subarus that have anti-lag on their turbochargers or have a sequential gearbox, the gas cars still have a disadvantage in some ways versus even the new Plaid, which is a single gear, no delay, very, it's a sharper sword. And interestingly enough, when I went to Mount Washington, I kept coming back with this challenge of, ooh, would I rather drive this in a Model 3 or the Model S? It really wasn't until I did the comparison with what Randy experienced with his Plaid vehicle that I have a very strong preference, and I think the Plaid would be the faster car.
Even though it's way heavier.
Even though it's heavier, yes, yeah. So just for those who are on, and just to be able to kind of share something and talk about it, how many of you that are on have actually seen the comparison that I posted on YouTube of my 2016 Model S versus the 2020 Model 3 versus Randy in the Plaid?
I've seen it, but I posted it to our Facebook pages today.
Okay.
As part of Zach Shahan's article in Clean Technica. So
And
I don't think too many of our people have been exposed to it. I don't think you only published it like 3 days ago, right?
Yep. And I think it's something that at some point I will share that just to kind of show everybody the differences in the technology over the years. Jim has a hand symbol up on his icon. Does that mean that Jim has a question or no? I'm not sure of this platform.
I don't know. Let me take a look.
Mr. Ringo.
Yes, I'm here, but I'm just listening. No question.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
We see that you have your hand is raised, so that must be by accident.
No, it was a high five for you, Larry.
Okay. All right. I'm going to lower it.
Boom. There you go.
Okay. All righty.
Yeah, so just to kind of update everybody, I guess, and I think it's kind of a good thing to do a little bit of an open forum on this. So there obviously was, which by the way, here's the one. So I brought this over here, pretty heavy. So here, this, by the way, was brought to you by a whole bunch of Tesla owners. So this is our Pikes Peak Trophy from 2020 for the exhibition class. And that is something that I was not expecting. I was expecting to be able to try to break our record that I had set in the Model S, which was a little bit under 12 minutes at Pikes Peak, and to be able to actually take a first place home in exhibition, which, just to clarify, exhibition class is a kind of a catch-all class for Pikes Peak. And in being that, it meant that a lot of factory teams will use that to be able to promote their latest cars because they don't want to conform to the Pikes Peak rules in other classes. So Acura, Ford, a few BMWs, home-built specials. It's kind of a catch-all class. And to be able to be the fastest car up there on race day was something that none of us were even planning for or expecting. So it was super exciting to be able to make that happen. The other part of it, though, is that our time with the Model 3 Performance was 46 seconds faster than the Model S P90 DL. And both those cars accelerate the same speed to 0 to 60 The Model S is a little bit faster than a quarter mile, but what's interesting is, and when I share the video, you'll see the differences. The thing that Tesla has really worked on is thermal management. The ability to have a car run faster, longer. And while for a lot of us Florida people that have low speed limits and stop and go traffic and a bunch of tourists, it's not as important. But globally, it's huge. It's something that matters so much to car enthusiasts and to people who have areas where they can actually have higher speed limits, that it helps create a stronger global brand. And it's been very interesting to kind of be on that forefront of pushing the envelope of what can your vehicle do. And the P90DL obviously was cutting edge in 2016, but the Model 3 Performance was cutting edge in 2020. And now the Plaid is the way to go from a standpoint of increased thermal management. And that's something that, yeah, we'll kind of get into in just a minute here.
Do I have any questions
Oh,
you want to ask? Blake?
Larry, your lips are moving, but I can't hear what you're saying.
Really? I muted myself? Can you hear me now? No? Wow. Another
Larry's on mute.
Yeah. Voiceless, Larry.
Oh,
He's gonna switch to sign language.
signals. I'm sorry. Let's see here. I don't know what happened. Can anybody hear me now?
So Zach, afterwards, you're gonna have to tell me how you do your background, because that is pretty smooth on how it's displaying there without being choppy on the background.
I don't wear a green shirt. It doesn't matter anyway. I don't have a green screen or anything. You go to the stop video little icon at the bottom of the screen, press the up arrow, and you could choose a virtual background. You just email yourself like a picture or something.
Yeah, it's wearing the black shirt versus the floral shirt.
Right.
It doesn't confuse the software as much.
Right.
Very black and white. All right, Larry, are you back with us audibly?
I don't know.
Nope.
Can you hear me? No? No, I'm sorry. I'm just going to have to do
I think
this.
Larry's wife actually is this is like it's her favorite selection. She's like, your lips are moving, but I can't hear you.
I don't know. What's going on here?
So Blake, this thing that was posted today that Larry shared about 2 hours ago, this was the Model S Plaid versus the Model S Ludicrous versus the Model 3. So
Yes.
you posted that. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, actually, if you'd like, and to give Larry a moment to kind of connect, or should I say, be able to speak, if it's okay, I'm going to try to share it and I'll run it, and then we can talk a little bit about that afterwards. And then kind of how that relates to a little bit of the strategy for what I'm going to do at Mount Washington, as well as for next year's Pikes Peak. And that will loop me back into why I wasn't there this year. So give me just 1 second. Let me get this up and running. And I'm going to do the YouTube video, so it'll be a little bit lower resolution and hopefully will stream well. All right, can everybody see that screen?
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Excellent. So let's see if the audio works. Audio test. Good. Good.
Okay.
Cool. So, hey, I'm going to introduce it anyway. So there we go. Hey guys, it's Blake Fuller, and I'm back with a special treat for you. We just had today the full running of the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb, and I've been watching the practice of the Teslas racing this year. As you can tell, I'm not there this year. I'm actually sitting in the 2016 record-breaking car, the Model S. And what I'm excited to share with you is going to be a comparison between this vehicle, which set the record in 2016, the 2020 record Tesla Model 3 that whole community helped support and put us to the checkered flag in first place in exhibition, and going to be comparing it to the new Tesla Model S Plaid driven by Randy Post. Why this is so important today is that they actually made the race shorter to where the upper section was never run in the race. So while I've been editing this together as kind of a sneak peek for the race, when I found out they were going to close the top section, I figured let's just go ahead and show what would have happened had the Model S I'm sitting in versus the Tesla Model 3 gone against Randy in the Model S Plaid. So big thanks to Unplugged Performance for approving us using some of their footage. And Randy, congratulations on your win today. And I'm hoping if you guys like this, I will do a few more comparisons from Pikes Peak and from other tracks. And we've got some other great footage. So make sure that you subscribe to this channel and definitely enjoy the commentary as I go through some of the differences between the unique personalities of the two Model S's and the Model 3 that set the record last year. So thanks a lot, guys. Let's check it out. Starting off with the course map, this is the upper section. In practice, you break the course down into thirds. And this last third, which is made up of a 4-mile length with an average grade of 6.4%, starts at around 12,800 feet, which is Devil's Playground. This is where the race ended in 2020. By the way, you guys get a special thing here because it is 6.45, and on one of the setups, it rounded up. Anyways, that's it. That's my little commentary there. But we're going to focus on the section to be able to show some big differences between the cars, especially as it comes to the elevation. This is sped up, and we're about to take green flag for practice coming out of Devil's Playground. You can see the elevation on the right, a steep initial climb into the left-hand turn here, which starts the downhill section towards Bottomless Pit. Up into Bottomless Pit, when we watch the video of the three cars, they're pretty dead even to that point. But as we start to climb out of it, that's where the Plaid starts to pull away. And as we get around into the section, this is a bit of an almost downhill again here. And as it curves to the right, this is the segment where the Plaid just pulls away from both of the cars. Into the braking, the Model 3 is actually pretty quick. And out of those sections, the Model 3 does well through Gravel Pit. Into Boulder Park, as indicated by all of the boulders that are around. This is going to get our section between mile marker 18 and 19. This is a kind of a long rolling uphill climb that hitting the apexes correctly, as well as a correct line through the bumpy sections, is so important. And even that high speed left, it has to be taken with caution. Here coming into the hairpin, I've rotated the map so that it's more facing upwards. And as we curve around to the right, we are going to get to our final hairpin. At this point, the Plaid is almost 20 seconds ahead as it accelerates out of the last turn to the left into the finish line. Now that we've seen the overview with the Model 3, let's get into the videos where on the top left will be Randy in the Plaid, bottom left, Model 3, bottom right and top right are the 2016 car. Let's send it. Wow. That Plaid is quick. And again, that was a steep uphill climb. Now we're coming, and this is at the actual race, or should I say regular speed. Now we're coming down into Bottomless Pit. You'll notice that actually the Plaid is not that far ahead of the other two cars, but as mentioned, as we accelerate away from here, this is where the Plaid starts to run away. The Model 3 starts to catch up with the P90DL, because the more and more we get into the climbing, the more that the previous Model S would not be able to maintain its almost 700 horsepower. And it'll be about this section here. And just as a kind of personal commentary, because it's hard to perfectly edit everything. When we were doing these test runs, the purpose of the test run with the Model S was to basically find the thermal limits of that run. So while it was my quickest run, I was full throttle all the way through that uphill section, which is the only reason that I was darn near close to getting to those first few corners the same as Randy did. But unfortunately, one of the things we learned after that was that if you go too hard too soon, you hit your thermal limits. So I just want to kind of give a little interject there for that, to kind of give a sense of how in the world did that P90DL get through the first few corners just as quick as the Plaid. It was because I wasn't limiting, he wasn't limiting, and of course, I do believe Randy was a little bit concerned about bottomless pit because last year didn't go so well. So after that, I'll take it from there.
Here, where Randy's tires are slightly coming up to temperature, he does have full slicks, even with 1,000 horsepower and that much weight. It takes a bit of time to get some heat in the temps and also to get the car up to the confidence feeling into the braking zone. Randy, you can hear the brakes just getting up to temperature there. Look at the Model 3 on the bottom left. It's still making that climb that Randy's already cleared. Just about here is where the Model 3 starts to catch up with the previous Model S. Again, Randy's getting through Boulder Park and about to clear Boulder Park into the right-hand uphill climb. And about now, he's going to just start checking out. The Model 3 is now making its uphill climb. The Model S, when driving it, my version, I could definitely feel it's starting to pull back power. Instead of 450, 500 kilowatt, we're somewhere 350 to 400, struggling. And at that point, the weight is working against it versus the 1,000 horsepower. Randy looked already into the hairpin. As he comes out of the hairpin, you can see the other two cars still making the uphill climb. Randy is just coming up to sightline for the final right-hand turn. And that final hairpin. I've just cleared the hairpin in the bottom right with the Model S, and the Model 3 is on its way towards that final right hairpin. Randy's now cleared the finish. Look at that, time of 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Wow. Model 3 coming through the final turn here. It looks so easy and lethargic, but there's a lot of fine adjustments that have to happen with the steering. The steering is much quicker on the Model 3 than the Model S. So it takes very finite movements. And for the final section, now comes through 8 seconds later, the P90DL.
Wow, that Tesla Model S Plaid is really, really quick. What else I find interesting is that at Pikes, Model S platform with a little bit longer wheelbase actually allows it to be a bit more stable at some of the higher speed transitions where the Model 3 sometimes will get a little unsettled. There's a lot of reasons for that. We can do an engineering explanation of it possibly later. But my takeaway is I really want a Tesla Model S Plaid. And the good news is that one is supposedly on its way to me. But we do want to go take it racing. So I'll be providing some more information on my Patreon. If you'll check it out, it's patreon.com, Electric Performance. And that'll share a little bit more about what we're looking to do for racing this summer, hopefully in a Model S Plaid, and set some new records and make history together. So thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and looking forward to sharing a lot more great content with you guys as I always have, and looking forward to the future together. Take care. It would be a production electric, the fastest production electric car. Okay. All right, so there we are. So one of the personal note, when I freaked out in the car after we won, I showed my kids the video and they're like, "Wow, Dad, we've never seen you freak out like that." I always try to like have lots of passion, but not freak out on stuff. But it was a really, really momentous, amazing moment that literally would not have happened without the community of people supporting. And when you think about it, and Henry's on the call, joining us as well, but we literally had a volunteer team to be able to support the car. And it was thanks to a lot of preparation and engineering and passion that really kind of brought all that together and yeah, made it happen for all of us. So, but again, man, I want a Tesla Plaid. That thing's quick. Every ninja wants a sharper sword, right?
Blake, can you explain to the people in the call that I know in the Mount Washington race, there's really only two classifications, right? There's a modified electric and the
Yeah.
But what is the idea around the exhibition class at Pikes Peak? What is the intent of that?
Well, here's the challenge of the exhibition class. This is recorded, and gotta choose my words carefully. So the exhibition class is I'm going to answer two schools of thoughts, right? So number one is that after the IDR set such a blazing record, those who are not electric vehicle enthusiasts derived that electric vehicles in all forms were more than capable of being able to compete head to head with gas cars, which meant that there's basically about three classes that relate to a production-based chassis. There is Time Attack 1, Time Attack 2, and Open Class. And so actually it was 2002 that I won the Open Class, and that was when my production-based Honda car ended up getting first place, but it was a street legal car in Florida. It wouldn't have been a 50 street state legal car. Mm-hmm. Each of those have different amount of allowances for craziness that you can have. So a Time Attack 2 car would be basically a production car that is safety orientated and has racing tires, racing brakes. Time Attack 1 is you can start changing suspension components and pickup points. I mean, very relatively, the unplugged performance car, I feel, was a great fit for a Time Attack 1 car. Now, looking at the results, he probably would have finished third in that class. The Open Class gets pretty crazy, and it's still a production appearing car, but it's almost the way NASCAR has progressed, meaning it kind of looks like a Ford Mustang, it kind of looks like a Camaro, but it's a tube chassis, it's a full race car, right? Exhibition is where they ended up kind of catch-all, bringing in the electric cars, because they had done away with, after the IDR record, they had done away with the formalized electric production and electric modified class. So if the IDR were to run again today, it most likely would run in either unlimited or in exhibition. Most likely unlimited. The challenge is that it doesn't necessarily foster competition for like-built electric cars. And that's where it becomes a challenge. And you have to understand that racing follows the money.
Yep.
It does. So and I'm saying that to you as third person plural. I know you understand that a lot of decisions follow money. It's such that there's a Pikes Peak trophy class for Porsches, because Porsche is willing to support the event and willing to sponsor it. And the people who put the event on, they have to have paychecks, they have to support their family.
Yep.
And then that becomes a little bit of a challenge. And one of the things that unfortunately didn't happen, but I really vied for and tried for this year, is I was blowing up Mobile One's phone going, please put me on the commentary for the Tesla vehicles. By the way, your Mobile One synthetic is an approved gear oil according to the Tesla manual. I will talk all about that. Please let me be on there, right?
Yep.
But there's beyond just the refined petroleum that ends up being a gear oil. There's a whole greater, $1 billion a day sales that happen from other types of petroleum. So why is it that the Teslas are in exhibition? It's because it's a catch-all class. Okay. That's the simplest way to put it. And Acura and other factory teams are in that class because some of the rules with Time Attack 1 and Time Attack 2 don't allow them to directly say, this is the car we sell at the showroom, or this is the car that could be the ultimate embodiment of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Fuller, well, before I ask my question, big fan, loved watching you race. And I'm studying mechanical engineering at University of Central Florida. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to go one at a time. I'll take my time and I'll give everybody else a chance. But I do have a lot
And you'll probably know more than me.
I have a lot of
There
engineering
you go.
questions. But the first thing I wanted to ask was, like, what kind of modifications were made to the motor or the battery to allow for extra power to be drawn during your runs?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I had this, so let's start with the Model S, right? So I had a vision of being able to take my knowledge of batteries and being able to somehow figure out a kind of a capacitor interface or basically a different 18650 cell that we would take apart a pack and be able to rebuild it and make that happen. But through a few of my kind of long-term friends at Tesla, the first comment was, it's possible. However, there are some challenges with the base firmware that have to be changed, and you have to have basically a standalone setup. And then that then became kind of the conscience check and the cash check of, can we afford to do it? And is it ethically representative of the car that people buy? And I think it was the second one. The former one, you can always raise money. You can always find a way to pay for things. But in the end, are you representing what is a true story? And if you go back in time to like 2015 when we first announced it, everybody's like, hey, this guy works at Real Battery. They make a bunch of crazy stuff for Formula One cars. What's the battery pack going to be? And the more that we had conversations, the more I realized that, you know what, our vector for performance, our goal was to beat a time that, from my calculations, we could beat with the off-the-shelf car. And that's where I said, you know what, it's not just good enough, it's great enough, and it shows what can happen. And the last thing I wanted to happen was this kind of back ending of media and other people coming in and saying, hey, what he won with wasn't the real car. Teslas aren't real. And then you're like, why am I doing this? So I guess the cliff notes for the first car was that it was a lot of testing to understand what were the limits of what we were given. As it is with anything. I mean, if you start with a simple component of tires, people go out and just do tire tests as a race team to understand what your tires can do. We just took that and just kind of added into it the entire battery element and the cooling element.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, all good. And the second car, the Model 3, was actually more intensive, and I'm so thankful for the community, especially to the person who helped lend us the car, which Dave, who provided the car to us. We could not have been so ahead of the game without his trust and commitment. We had that car early enough to where I was able to, and Chin Motorsports, which is, it's Chin Track Days, but they're a Florida/Georgia-based organization that does track events, super EV friendly. They provided all my track time for free at Sebring, at Homestead, Daytona, COTA. Amazing. We were able to get out there and actually put a bunch of laps down and be able to actually take all that data of how quickly the car overheats to be able to try to profile how I need to drive it. And that really comes down to, what are the modifications? The number one modification to date had been information and understanding of possible scenarios, so that as a driver, similar to any video game or any other decision in life, you have to understand the compromises to be able to make the right choice and get to the top as fast as possible. What I'm excited about and why I do all this is that my goal is to be able to raise awareness that things are continuing to get better, and that, and I don't think the Plaid's quite there yet, but like my super dream is to be able to go out with a Tesla vehicle or other vehicles that have benefited from this entire movement and be able to have it so that the driver gets tired before the car, or the tires wear out before the car. And that's how it is if I go and get into an internal combustion car that has been benefiting from hundreds of years of other people's engineering. Other things fail before the engine and the drivetrain does. You run out of fuel, right? And I think we're very, very close to that. And again, Pikes Peak, Mount Washington, all of these events, those bring forth flaws in a much shorter distance, and they help highlight it in a way that's much more public. And I think that that's why it's so important to be involved in these. And that's about as quickly summarized as I can do.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And you're rocking the shirt and everything else. And do you have a Volt?
Yes, sir, I do. It's
Cool. Awesome.
put all kinds of crazy stuff on. I'm a big racing guy, so I put all the racing crap on the Volt. I made it look like I put SS badges on it. I know, you can make fun of me for it, but I wish they made an SS version. I hope one day I could maybe make it something, quicker, maybe put a bigger motor in it. I don't know, but I think it would be just really cool to do something like that.
And that's a great passion, because I would love to see an SS version that's electric of Chevrolet. I'd love to see SVT coming from Ford, and I'd love to see kind of almost like an MI, because that sounds, kind of special agent style, coming
Right.
from BMW, right?
Mhm.
All of that I think is very, very important. I think it fosters the growth of a new age of passion of electric vehicles, blended with an expectation of an older clientele that, when I say older, meaning people who are currently buying those SVT, SS, and M badged or AMG badged products, to be able to have a slice of racing, have a slice of performance. And I think that that's something that the Plaid, just the Plaid moniker, I think is actually going to be something that creates, like, oh, I've got it's not just the P now, the performance, is the Plaid, right? And I think it's pretty exciting. So, and by the way, I still love the Volts. I love anything that has some type of electrification to it, even if it's, all of us want to have a SpaceX vehicle, but we don't have one yet.
I mean, it might come soon, but
Yeah.
just one more question, and this is kind of like a funny question, but also a serious question. You mentioned you guys had a team of engineers.
Mhm.
Do you need more?
Yes, absolutely. So that's one of the things that part of this call is about, is just really kind of to share a little bit of the vision for the future, and to be able to tap into new creative ideas, and to be able to look at things differently, right? Yeah. So yes is the answer. We'll leave it at that. Always need more engineers. The less I have to think, the more I can drive.
But I mean, I was just talking about your team. If you needed another team member to help you, I would love to do that.
Well, consider that an open opportunity, and we will discuss that further and see if it works for both parties. Awesome.
Thank you.
Game on. And speaking of game on, so I don't know, Henry, are you still with us? Yeah, you are. Do you mind unmuting real quick?
Yep, I'm sorry. I couldn't find the mute button.
No, all good, all good. So just a quick little intro. So Henry and I met at CODA at the Fully Charged event, and Henry is a huge, basically, well, I say basically, do you want to summarize what you spend more time racing cars in versus others? Like, where do you spend most of your
So the short version, So the short version is I drive electric Formula cars. So Formula One, but a couple of steps down the ladder, which will be coming out to the US in 2022. I got my start in esports, so I also have a hand in that. But yeah, Blake and I met at COTA in Austin, Texas last February, when I saw someone with a Tesla at a track day, and I went over to see who in their right mind would take a Tesla to a track day. And we got talking, and yeah, told me about his plan to go to Pikes, and yeah, here we are.
Yeah, and what I love is that Henry represents it. Henry, would you help share how old you are? I mean, you've got a lot of vintage to you, right? You're like 70.
Oh, I'm ancient. I've just turned 21.
There you go. Yeah. Oh, we
But
should.
I'm a 45-year-old at heart, so
Yeah. It's all good, and I believe actually 45-year-old of brain. So, and I love that. So Henry, like myself, grew up on a lot of seat time virtually and driving video games. And so I feel like that correlation of that kind of gaming era is something that's going to help the Tesla growth and help the understanding of all the stuff that we do. Even if you're not an engineer, you're still going to have a passion for things that are very digital. And you're not necessarily going to have to be super stuck to internal combustion. You're going to look for the sharper sword. So I'll pause there.
And I apologize to everyone else who wanted to ask questions. Sorry, big passion of mine.
No apology needed. You're jumping in with engineering questions. Other people may have either financial questions or just fun, like, oh my gosh, weren't you afraid of falling off that cliff moment.
Well, I appreciate Zach's enthusiasm. If you can hear me, am I still muted?
Hey, Larry, you're back with us, but very, very quiet.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, we need somebody like Zach. We need enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is the club's middle name. So, yeah. I don't think you sent us off course, Zach, is what I'm saying.
That's all that matters.
It's all good. So, Larry, as our wise leader here, how would you like me to help either share stories or videos, or what would you, from your standpoint, do you have anything particular that you feel is very kind of top of the charts for the rest of the group here? Because
no, I'd like others to chime in. I felt that the video you did was very topical in terms of, in as much as that we just had a Pikes Peak run, and it was so illustrative to see the comparisons.
Yeah.
And so I feel we've covered that, but I'd like to hear others if they have specific questions or about you or even your career, because Blake wears many hats.
Yeah, I can't believe I still have hair with all the hats I take on and off. It's crazy. It must be glued in somehow.
Whatever works.
Yeah. I think it's just trying to run away from me. What if does anybody have a particular question as it relates to either Pikes Peak or even car setup? I'm just kind of throwing some things out there.
So I'd be interested in finding out, basically the difference between one of the cars that you're racing and, something we're driving on the street. What all are you taking off or adding on to make it competitive?
Yeah. So Sean, thank you so much. And I love the background. Are you in a boat?
I'm an RV.
RV. Okay, cool. I didn't mean to be Canadian and say a boat. Awesome. And it looks like you actually have a lot of different, a lot of things running there. So differences between the cars that I race at Pikes Peak and what I plan to race at Mount Washington are really coming down to safety and weight reduction. So there are very limited things you can do to the production vehicle. So actually what I'll do, let me go ahead and pull up real quick, just so you can kind of see. I'll take just a moment. And we're going to talk actually very specifically about Mount Washington. I'm going to give you the rules as to what you're allowed to do to the car for the production vehicle. And I think that Larry might have alluded to it a little bit, but there have been a couple of electric vehicles that have raced at Mount Washington before this year's race, but they were home built specials, or they were a kind of a, I don't want to say proper race car, but they were a racing chassis that somebody adapted either a DC drive motor or an AC drive motor to it, and it's a race car. It's not something you can go down and purchase, and or in Tesla's case, go online and purchase. But the reality is that the changes are safety related and basically weight reduction. So let me pull up, if I can, real quick here.
I mean, the short answer for Pikes Peak is that we stripped everything out down to the, I mean, it was down to exposed wires. I think it was, I don't remember the exact number, but we took about 900 pounds out of the car, I think. And then you're limited.
You might actually be doing a pounds to kilograms conversion in reverse.
I might.
Yeah, so I think we ended up pulling about 400 pounds out of the actual Model 3. But actually, if you don't mind, share. Do you recall the drama around the coilover suspension?
I remember we had an issue where we wanted to put different springs on it, and we were told that we couldn't. And we almost ended up cutting the springs to actually lower the car and increase the camber angle, but we decided against it in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, so we did all of our testing up until about a month before the event on a set of BC Racing coilover suspension. BC is an Orlando, Florida-based company, and they make a really great, for the cost point, about $1,000, $1,200, an amazing suspension for the Model S and the Model 3 that gives you a fair amount of adjustability. It still rides great on the streets, and it's something that we did all of our testing and setup with. And when Josh Allen and Randy had joined into the competition, suddenly it came up for discussion of, well, wait a second, we heard Blake has some coilovers, because he was, just as a stepping back in time, we documented all of the build of our Model 3 race car on YouTube. So pretty much anything we were doing, we were sharing with the community, because they were helping us make it happen. So you're helping us make it happen, we're going to educate everybody on how we do it. And one of the episodes talked about coilover suspension, and suddenly the question came up from the sanctioning committee of, well, that's not really production. So that was something we had to remove, and we had one test at Sebring before we went to Pikes, and we put the stock, 100% stock 2018 suspension that came off the car back on the car. The crazy thing, though, is that when you remove 400 pounds out of the Model 3, that raises the car up, because when you load your car full of passengers, it goes down if you don't have air suspension, right? Or an adjustable suspension. So the car suddenly is higher than it was before. And it put it into kind of a unique handling trait. So yeah, I mean, basically the short answer is the car that we race is 100% representative of the capability of the car you can buy. And in the Model 3, it's even more so, because the Model S does not have an accelerometer-based acceleration pullback. So in the Model S, when we removed the weight out of the car, which was 600 pounds, put the R compound tires on, my 0 to 60 was about 2.5, 2.6 in race form. In street form, it's 2.9 to 3.0. In the Model 3, it didn't matter how much weight I would pull out of that car. the 0 to 60 time and the quarter mile time will always be within 0.1 second or 0.2 seconds on the quarter mile. And the reason being is they have an accelerometer that's within the vehicle that will actually pull back the peak kilowatt when you reduce the weight. The upside is that by doing that, you're using less energy going up the hill. So it does go a little bit better with less weight. But for Mount Washington, here's the classes. I'm going to share this with you guys real quick. So you can take a look at it. The Mount Washington rules are much simpler than the Pikes Peak rules because it's very much an event where they have less budget. It's very competitor orientated. But if we go to stock electric, look at this. This class is production electric vehicles, and they must be run as manufactured. So that's their simple rule listing for the stock electric class. And in doing so, the areas that we have verbally discussed with the rule committee is that we are allowed to change tires to still be a street legal tire. We're allowed to run a tire diameter that is equal to or smaller than stock. And we're allowed to run a tire that is able to fit within the wheel wells without modification, meaning that if you suddenly have to bang out a fender or put a wider fender on it, you can't run the tire. And you're allowed to run brake pads that would allow for more safety. Outside of that, you have to run a roll cage, fire extinguisher, and you remove all of the factory interior and all of the factory padding and airbags, because the last thing you want is to be jumping over a bump or something else and it sets the airbags off. So for example, that one section going uphill that I was talking about, Randy just checking out, because of all the frost heaves in the road, the Model 3 was actually catching air. And the Model S actually broke its right rear suspension in testing because it was such a hard impact. And Randy had the same problem this year where one of his Bilstein shocks that they were developing also broke. I mean, you're literally jumping the car through the air on some of these roads. So, Sean, I can go into more detail if you want, but hopefully that at least touched on some of the questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. It does.
Yeah, no, my pleasure.
Well, I think we're run out of time.
Yep.
But we know where you live.
Uh-oh.
What I mean by that, in case
you don't have to explain it. Don't worry. There's no.
I'm just trying to tell our folks, is, we're a statewide club. It just so happens that Blake and I live in the same town. We both live in Sarasota. That's what I meant by that.
Okay.
But anyway, I hope to have you back, Blake, to pick us, to keep us informed of where you're going, and like I said, you are a club member, so I can see us doing many articles on your various exploits.
Yep, and if it's okay, just for a quick cliff notes. One of the things that, and Zach, thank you so much for asking the question about, do we need more engineers? If it's okay, I would like to just kind of go through a quick high level of our Mount Washington goals. And Larry, because you and I know each other so well, and I felt like this was a great opportunity to kind of start the ball rolling. I'll take less than 5 minutes and just kind of go through what our plans are for Mount Washington. So with Mount Washington, the race is in August this year. And it is such that, and maybe actually, I'll just do a quick little screen share and we can rock and roll. It's only 4 slides, and that way at least you have some visuals to be able to take a look at. And all right, you guys good there? Can you see that?
Yep.
Hey, I know that guy. All right. So here's what made the previous opportunities happen. And ultimately, when I first proposed this idea to the Tesla community of us going back to Pikes Peak in 2020, very candidly, financially, there was no way I was going to do this without the help of other people. We had already set the record in 2016. Because of what was beginning to happen with COVID and other things that were happening in our world, the dream of being able to go to Pikes Peak was just not going to happen. So we did the call to action on YouTube and a few other places. And fortunately, somebody was so kind to be able to provide a car for the race. And my crazy concept of like literally, you know, if you go downtown and you see bricks with people's names and community names on them that help support their favorite arts or their favorite cause, the same concept was employed into racing. And so we had over 150 people from the Tesla community that each, you know, basically bought a place on the car that is a place in history for $200. And that got us 80% of the budget we needed. And I worked my butt off and was able to make up the other 20%. And so that allowed us to get there and to be able to come back with a new world record, which was a lot faster than before. And we got first in class. And the great thing was that I don't think anybody realizes how much time it takes to capture all the footage and to document and to edit and to put it all together, but it's a lot. But it's a commitment that I'm more than happy to make because it builds a foundation for others to learn from and to be able to do things that they dream of, right? And so as we look forward, I kind of want to do like that wash, rinse, repeat, right? We had a great success before. There's no guarantees that everything's going to go perfect this year. I mean, as we've seen with other racing, that's racing. But our goal is that really we first want to get to Mount Washington and to be able to be the first production electric vehicle that's actually a production car to ever race up the mountain. And the next level thing is, hey, if there's a windfall, I would love to be able to race the Plaid. And yes, there was a reservation placed a while ago, and yes, there is a car available for me. And there's no way that's going to happen without other people's help. So if you have some crazy ideas or some corporations you know that have a budget that care about sustainable energy or just an affinity for racing, awesome. Please let me know later. There's no pressure there. But just a little bit of a background on Mount Washington and why I found it so exciting when I was young. It's the oldest event, or should I say attraction, in North America. I mean, they built a road originally for horse-drawn carriages to go up this, to be able to get to the top of a mountain back in 1861. It's like, whoa, that's a long time ago. The first race was in 1904, so it predates the Indy 500, predates Pikes Peak, and our goal is that in August this year, we will be the first to race the electric production car up the mountain. So we will make this happen independent of anybody's help. We can make it better with other people's help. I already have the Model S. I fortunately in each of these, and back to the question that Sean had, was how close are these to production cars? Both of the vehicles that I raced, I put a bolt-in roll cage that met the specs, which meant that those cages are designed to bolt into the factory car with some adaptation to the mounting platforms, but it allowed for us to be able to keep those cages to put into other vehicles. So I already have a full racing setup for a Model S and the Model 3, meaning wheels, tires, I don't need suspension in either of these cases, but all the safety equipment is already staged. So we can either use the Model S that I have, we can go to a Model 3 for Mount Washington, or we can even go as far as a Model S Plaid. No matter what, our goal is in August to go up Mount Washington and to be the first to complete the event. So I actually had a chance a couple weeks ago to go to Mount Washington and to be able to drive the rental car up in Fury. Nothing's faster than a rental car with the insurance paid. Well, maybe a Tesla. But we had a chance to go up there. I've already entered the race. We've already paid for the race. We already have our lodging set. We've already done all of our recon and analysis, and we have all the vehicle safety equipment that we need. The vehicle is to be determined. So this is the first call, and as Larry put in the email, kind of an exclusive of us first talking about it, but right now it really comes down to this and subsequent meetings and calls within a very short time period to see if there's an ability to go all the way and be able to represent what a Tesla is able to do with the Plaid. And at the very, should I say, minimum requirement, we have my vehicle, which is the Model S, that can still race the race and still represent the brand. So that's really, from my high level, kind of a beginning of, after this call, if there's a way that either you can personally lend some intellectual capital, some physical capital, or know others who have some monetary capital that are able to help make this vision a reality, that would be wonderful. And it's also something that, in speaking with Pikes Peak, I plan to go back next year for the 100th running of Pikes Peak as a special invited guest, because only those who have previously won the race before or who are going to compete in a very special vehicle are going to be invited next year. So if I had my dream, it would be somehow we put together a program with a Model S Plaid. I'm able to document the destruction / construction of that vehicle and the testing and all the craziness that happens, go compete at Mount Washington, and then be able to bring the vehicle back to Pikes Peak to be able to represent the fastest thing that Tesla offers. So that's all I have to say about that, Larry.
Well, we thank you very much. It is exciting. Even those of us who are not really, very conversant in motorsports, it's good to have a person like yourself educating us.
And the fun part is that for those of us in Florida, one of the things that I find very exciting about those who have supported this movement is that we have the opportunity to be able to have track time at road courses. And one of the things that I am working on is also being able to, and I would love to have a follow-up with anybody who's interested in this crazy concept of mine. I've been speaking to our local drag strip to be able to set up what I would consider to be kind of the Plaid or Tesla experience. And that would be where we would actually be able to bring people out to the drag strip to be right seat or back seat in a Tesla Plaid for a fee, to be able to literally rip down the drag strip. And that way, what we do in that instance is we help create converts. I mean, driving a Tesla of any of the performance variants is literally like a roller coaster. And I feel like it's something that can really help people to be excited about it and can help create basically the funding that's needed to go racing. The good news is we don't have to worry about race fuel, and we don't have to worry about paying for too much oil, and we don't have to worry about changing spark plugs or too many other variables because we're racing production. But the main thing is really educating people on what's possible, and that's what's exciting to me.
Sounds very exciting, Blake.
And of course, Larry is not willing to get in the car yet on the racetrack, but for others that are.
Well, you just never know.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll put it in chill mode for you, bro. Don't worry.
Well,
And I think one last point to touch on what Blake's talking about, and point to really emphasize, is that the great thing about what we did at Pikes is that it was made possible by normal people like yourselves, owners and people who are passionate about Tesla and what we're doing. Just people giving what they could to help out and really make it possible. So it was really cool to be able to do something that was entirely funded by a community rather than big racing sponsors and doing it the normal way.
And Henry, thank you for that. And that is something to point out real quick, is that in the racing industry, the money that flows, I don't want to say it always flows from big oil, but it flows from big consumables. It flows from things that are I don't want to make a claim of planned obsolescence, but it flows from a place of aftermarket components that are expected to not last long enough. And when you suddenly look at the laundry list of all the connections that prior to racing Teslas and prior to building the first hybrid race car in 2007, I was doing drifting. I was burning through 120 tires a year, literally just smoking them up and burning fuel and destroying clutches and destroying anything to show people how cool it was to destroy stuff. And that in itself created the revenue or created the sponsorship opportunities. And when I go through the list of all the companies that would fund racing, that would have been my $250,000 or $500,000 budget, 90% of those have no interest in what we're doing. But the good news is that all of the community has interest in being able to show others what's possible. And that to me is like just the super exciting part of, yeah, I'm still blown away. I mean, both Henry and I are like, okay, we met at CODA and this was a little bit of a pipe dream, but somehow with the help of a lot of other people and awareness is a huge thing, just sharing the fact that it's happening and that others can be involved. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to do something personally. It's just kind of sharing the story of who else can do something if you can't.
Well, we appreciate your sharing the story, Blake.
It's a fun story that we get to make together. So anyways, all right, we're way over time, but thank you for indulging me in my technical ineptitude. What was it that you said earlier? There was a word you created.
Well, I thank you so much, and thank you, Henry. It was a great hearing from you as well. I hope you'll join us again, because I'm sure we'll have Blake.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be trying to keep track of, as I said, his and your exploits. We appreciate it.
Yes.
But I think I need to conclude this, because I'll bet you people haven't had dinner yet. So I do greatly appreciate the time you spent with us, and it's very exciting to see what you're doing.
Larry, thank you so much, and please feel free to share my contact information with anybody that is on the call.
Your contact information is already shared as part of being a club member.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so if anybody wants to reach out on a personal level with insights or even just follow-up questions that you didn't feel comfortable with asking while we're on the call, I tend to be very overly generous with my time, and I care about each of you, so thank you so much.
Well, thank you again. With that, I'm going to conclude this, and to be continued. Thanks so much.
Yes. Thanks, Larry. Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Take care.
Thanks a lot.